On August 9th, we have a full moon in the sign of Aquarius that could prove to be one of the biggest lunations of the year on a mundane level. That means, as far as world events go, it may also have importance in your own chart. If you have planets or points at early degrees of the cardinal signs or the fire and air signs, I'll unpack the meaning of the full moon in the upcoming video. If you enjoy it, like and subscribe. It helps people find my content. This is a complex energy that we're looking at on August 9th. So I'm going to pull up the chart because there's so much happening and it will help you understand the nature of this full moon. So here, look at all these aspects. If you listen to my new moon video a couple weeks ago, where we had a new moon at the beginning of Leo, we saw there that we have all the outer planets have entered fire and air signs, and that Leo new moon was the first time the moon or lunation touched all of those aspects, meaning the moon itself was near the beginning degrees of a fire sign. And so today what we see is the full moon on August 9th is actually happening at middle degrees. It's at 16 degrees of Aquarius. A full moon, of course, always happens when the moon is opposite the sun. But then look and see what else is going on in this chart. We have an aspect that's called a kite. A kite happens when you have a grand trine. A grand trine is when three planets are exactly trine each other. Here we see Mars in Libra is trine Pluto in Aquarius, is trine Uranus in Gemini. Trines have this energy, or grand trines have this energy of an enclosed system where maybe not a lot is happening because the energy is nice and flowing. And so it's in the background, and it can be this system where it's almost like you don't get the information you need because you're like, hey, I got it all figured out. And this is a grand trine in air. And there's a great aspect, or excuse me, a great book called Aspect Patterns that talks about the meaning of trines and different elements. And when it comes to air, it's kind of this idea that I have all the information I need. Don't bother me. But as we move into and look at a kite, what happens is we have an opposition in the middle of it. You have Mars, which is part of the Grand Trine, is opposite Saturn and Neptune in Aries. And this creates a tension. In fact, that Saturn-Mars opposition is a very difficult aspect that challenges us in some ways to hold the tension of the two most difficult planets in the solar system. Mars, the god of war, and Saturn, the god of restrictions and hard work and responsibility. So when you add in an opposition, you get a couple sextiles here. It's like the energy is no longer static and contained of that grand trine. Instead, it's moving outward toward the apex, this Saturn Neptune in Aries. So let's talk about what that might mean for you on a personal level as well as a mundane or world stage kind of thing. Well, the aspect here, it's kind of difficult because Saturn is in Aries, a sign where he's in his fall, meaning he doesn't do so well. He's not held on high, he's not respected. And Saturn in Aries can have an impulsive quality, a desire to act. Aries is a fire sign. Saturn likes to go slowly and tread carefully. So you could expect the possibility of some impulsive action here that may be based on fantasy or illusion because Neptune is there with Saturn. And so it may be that you get some information that causes you to act in a way where maybe you're relying on data that you thought was clear, but it's not quite clear. So there's a need for this full moon over these next 2 weeks. If you do get information in your life that causes you want to act suddenly, to take some sudden action, that you check the facts, that you see, is this true or is this not true, that you contain your impulsivity. Another reason why this is a difficult opposition between Saturn and Mars is not only is Saturn in his fall in Aries, but Mars is in his detriment, meaning Mars doesn't like Libra. Libra is the sign of the diplomat. When Mars is in Libra, we can have somebody saying one thing in a diplomatic way, but really they have the knife in their hand. So we have to be careful about listening to and whether or not somebody might be misleading us under this aspect. So you can see the double need for care around information we receive. Then the other thing we can see in this chart is that Uranus, the planet of liberation and sudden downloads of information, is in a sextile to Mercury and in a trine to Mars. So when Mercury and Uranus are together in a chart, it's kind of like we feel like we have an instant insight, some instant information. And so you can see as the story unfolds of this full moon, the potential for getting some information that makes us then want to act, right? In this impulsive way, thinking we know the truth, but perhaps there's something behind the scenes where there's fantasy or illusion underneath that, or somebody trying to act as though acting in our own most diplomatic way that might help us, but in fact, they've got a knife in their hand. Now, that sounds pretty dark and ominous, but it is true that this chart contains some difficult energy and an impulsivity to act that may be errant, right? At the same time, one thing that's benefiting us on a personal level is the Venus and Jupiter, the two benefic planets, are here in Cancer where Jupiter is exalted. So it may be that we get a little bit of assistance around protecting ourselves. Cancer is a sign that has to do with protection and creating safe space for things to grow. So we might be able to lean on that energy as we feel caught up by some sort of action. So that's on a personal level. And again, this lunation is likely to impact you more if you have planets in the first degrees of Aries, Libra, Capricorn, or Cancer. Those are the four cardinal signs where this difficult opposition energy between the two malefics is happening. Oh, I feel like I had one more thing that I wanted to say. Oh, yeah. So that's on the personal level. On the mundane level, meaning, what's happening in the greater world in the United States or internationally. This feels like it could be a key moment where some information is discovered, revealed. Whether it's true or not may be difficult to tell, and nations perhaps might take action on that. Aries is the sign of war. I'm not saying that a war will break out, but somebody might want to be taking some strong action in response to quick information they receive. A nation could do that under these circumstances. So, anyway, it'll be interesting to see what unfolds both in our personal lives and the greater world with this lunation. So, thanks for listening. If you have questions or if you have points at early degrees of cardinal signs and you know your rising sign, feel free to drop a comment and I can tell you what area of life this might affect you. For example, if that Mars-Saturn opposition is in your first and seventh house, whatever information or whatever acting out that potentially might happen would be in the area of who you are and then partnership. It's that axis of partnership. If it was in the fourth and 10th house, the Mars and Saturn, it might be around conflicts or working things out around home and career and so on. So anyway, I hope y'all have a good week and buckle up and do all those good things that we do to try and ground and center ourselves when there's a potential for difficult energy entering our lives. And I'll see you in a couple weeks at the next lunation, the new moon. Have a great week.